I told my baby mama that I'm slowly dying and she thinks I'm being selfish. I should have known not to have a horrible disease that'll kill me before our kid graduates high school. Me and Kate are the parents of Mark, 4. We split up before he was born, and to be honest I'm not very involved with the parenting besides being generous with child support and occasionally having Mark over. I have a chronic and terminal condition that recently landed me in hospital. I had a really horrible flare-up and had to be admitted to ICU. To make it worse, it happened during the time I was supposed to have Mark over. I was unconscious and on life support so I couldn't answer Kate's calls. When I woke up, I checked my phone and saw all the missed calls and messages. Kate was very upset as I basically ghosted her, and she sent a lot of rude and judgmental messages. So I snapped a pic of me in the hospital bed with all the tubes attached and sent it to her with the caption, "Sorry, was busy trying not to die." Kate obviously freaked out and apologized, and I, being high on meds, told her that it's okay, just a normal day having X. Turns out Kate didn't know about my condition. We didn't really have a relationship, she was just a girl from my school whom I hooked up with and it didn't end very well. And we don't have much contact aside from Mark-related stuff. I don't know why I didn't tell her, I probably forgot or something. Obviously, it made her freak out even more. Kate called me and started crying and yelling at the same time, basically having a breakdown over the phone. She said I should have been upfront with her about it back then, that it's my fault if Mark ever gets sick, it's not a genetic nor a transmittable condition so he's okay by the way. She also said it's unfair that we made a baby who will lose his dad at a young age, and this is where I might have been the jerk. I said, you know what would be more unfair? Effing dying before my only son graduates high school. It upset her even more and she said that I'm the asshole for making her and Mark go through this. I said it was not my fault, she said it was because if I was upfront with her, she wouldn't have hooked up with me. I told her it was too late, and she called me a jerk, hung up, and told everyone I was a jerk to her. Am I the jerk for telling my mom I don't give a damn about my autistic brother? My parents were very loving when I was kid, but when I was 7 years old, my mom gave birth to my younger brother. I tried to love him but I noticed that as soon as he came, my parents stopped paying that much attention to me. It got even worse when he was diagnosed with autism when he was 3 years old. Now, my dad is never home and my mom talks to me about once a day because she's so busy dealing with my brother's meltdowns. I've known my best friend Rachel since we were in kindergarten. Her mom is the nicest person I've ever met. Rachel and I played soccer but my mom was rarely able to take me to practices and games so Rachel's mom would always take me. I used to be in the school choir and my parents went to like one performance during the 6 years I did it. Rachel's mom was at every performance for me even though Rachel wasn't in choir. Those are just a few examples, but Rachel's mom has always been there for me when my parents weren't available. My mom never really cares what I'm doing unless she needs me to watch my brother so I spend a lot of time at Rachel's house. Once I spent a whole weekend there and my mom didn't even call to ask where I am. Rachel's family go on a lot of vacations and they often take me. They're going to Disney World during Thanksgiving break and invited me to come with them. I asked my dad and he said I could go. They've already planned and booked everything and I'm really excited. I've been to Disneyland once with my family and it was horrible. My brother threw a huge tantrum on the first day because he wanted to go on the rides alone and sit between mom and dad so I had to stay in the hotel most of the time. My brother found out that I'm going to Disney and he had a really big meltdown. He loves Disney and he was mad that I was going without him. My mom told me that she was planning to go to Washington to visit my grandparents. My dad didn't say anything about that so I'm pretty sure she just made that up to stop me from going. And even if they are going, I don't want to. I don't want to go on a 14-hour car ride with my brother and I'm pretty sure when we get there they're either going to make me stay with him while they go out or take him out and leave me alone in the hotel. I also wouldn't be allowed to go out on my own. She told me that I need to think about my brother and his feelings are more important because he's younger and autistic. I told her that I honestly don't give a F about my brother's feelings and I wish he was never born. He was there when I said all this and he's been crying and screaming for the last 3 hours and it's giving me a headache. My mom has been trying to calm him down and my dad said that he'll still let me go because he understands I'm frustrated. He also grew up with neurodivergent siblings so he knows what it's like. My mom said that I'm a rude, ungrateful brat and I need to be kinder to my brother. Am I the jerk?
I refuse to let my niece live with my substance-obsessed sister. Am I the jerk for wanting to sue for custody? My sister Lily had my niece Emma when she was 26. She was at the time living with my parents along with her then boyfriend and they had both just gotten out of rehab for H addiction. Both her and her boyfriend were not able to stay clean for long, and she was using them throughout her pregnancy. When Emma was almost 2 months old, she came to me begging me to take Emma for 2 months while she checked into rehab again to get clean. I was 22 years old living in an efficient apartment while putting myself through law school, but my parents insisted they couldn't care for an infant and had suggested foster care to my sister, so I took my niece in. When my sister got out of her rehab, she got back together with her boyfriend who was still taking drugs and thus began 5 years of a vicious cycle where one of them would get clean only to be dragged back under by the other. I took legal guardianship of Emma, although it was still supposed to be temporary. Every time Lily would bring up taking her back, I said I would agree on the condition that they both passed a substance test. That never happened. When Emma was almost 6 years old, my sister came to me saying she was once again pregnant. This was the turning point for her, and she gave birth to my nephew having been clean for almost 8 months. Obviously it was very hard for both me and Emma, going from her living with me, to moving back in with her parents. We went to court and worked out a custody arrangement where I still have Emma every weekend, but she spends the week with her mom and dad. We attended family therapy all together for the first year, and once we settled on a routine we stopped. Here comes the issue. My sister is once again pregnant and she and her former boyfriend, now husband, say that they don't want to allow Emma to come with me on weekends because apparently she comes home to them acting like a brat. I absolutely understand the issue. My sister is a stay-at-home mom, she does not work so she has plenty of time with Emma, but she chooses not to. I explained to my sister that when Emma is with me she is the center of attention and going from that to having to fight her brother for her mom's limited attention between bouts of morning sickness has to be hard. I offered to take my nephew weekends as well to give my sister some rest, or to possibly resume family therapy so Emma could work through these changes. My sister simply told me that Emma would be taking a break from spending time with me. I let her have 2 weekends with Emma and then when she continued to stonewall me I threatened to take her to court. We have a custody agreement in place and I am still one of Emma's legal guardians. She said I'm throwing the past in her face, and won't let her be a real mother to Emma. I'm conflicted. I raised Emma for almost 6 years and I treasure every moment I spend with her, but am I getting in the way? Emma calls me every evening and asks what we are doing over the weekend and why I don't have time for her, so I think additionally my sister is spinning it as me not wanting her to come. I just want what's best for Emma, so am I the jerk?
My wife cheated on me with my best friend, but their stories are different. I don't know who to believe. My wife Lisa and my best friend Tom used to hang out in a group for years. We were kind of known to be the three musketeers of sorts. Even when Tom eventually found someone of his own to marry, Lisa was best friends with her as well. Lisa and Tom had an extremely close relationship, though, and would often call each other platonic soulmates. One day, Lisa came up to me and told me she didn't feel comfortable being alone with Tom anymore. I asked her why and she didn't tell me at first. For weeks, whenever we had a social gathering with Tom, they'd stare at each other for a while, but would never talk. I thought they just had an argument until one day, Lisa came to sobbing. I listened to her side of the story and then asked Tom his side. There's an issue though, they both have different sides of the story. Lisa says that last weekend, she and Tom were alone listening to music together after his wife went to bed. Lisa said Tom was standing next to her and unexpectedly kissed her on the lips. Lisa said she recoiled and said no, she was with me and he was married to her best friend. Lisa says Tom then took out his schlong and said that they were both free spirits and it was not cheating unless he put it in her kitty. Lisa says she told Tom she was in love with me, laughed it off, he put it away and ended the night with Tom driving her home a while later. Lisa says this was not consensual and she and Tom decided that it would not be a good idea to be alone together in the future. Lisa revealed this to me after Tom was upset with Lisa after not hanging out again a few nights later. Lisa said she was afraid of what Tom might say to me, and me leaving her as a result, and afraid of losing her friendship with Tom's wife. I asked Tom what happened. Tom says they were side dancing together. They were close and he kissed her open mouth and felt her breasts. Tom said this went on for a few minutes and nothing more happened. Tom said they stopped because Lisa said it was cheating on both me and his wife. Tom said since he was a free spirit and did not consider what was happening cheating, he wanted to jokingly prove a point that he could even take his schlong out and it still wasn't cheating unless he put it in her kitty. Tom said that the dancing, kissing, honker grabbing was consensual, and they mutually decided to not be alone together again. Tom is afraid of his wife finding out. Tom said he did not tell me because he did not consider anything that happened cheating, but admitted his wife would consider it cheating and would divorce him. Both Lisa and Tom have incentive to minimize or not fully disclose what actually happened for fear of my reaction and said they were fearful of me telling Tom's wife. Lisa is adamant in her version. Tom is adamant in his version. Both do not want me saying anything to Tom's wife. Did something more happen? Who is telling the truth? I told my kids I don't love them and I don't care if their mom dies. They're on their own. I, 56, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer back when I was 37. They caught it relatively early but I was not expected to survive. About a month after my diagnosis, my ex-wife Sarah divorced me, took the kids, house and most of our savings. She even turned the kids against me and I was alone. I was an only child and my parents died, to deal with my seemingly inevitable death. Well, except one person, my coworker Jane. She was the only person in the world who seemed to care about me. Before you ask, there was no infidelity. Sarah divorced me because she couldn't be my nurse as she watched me die. Anyways, the doctors wanted to try to remove the tumor after a few courses of chemo, and I went into remission after the surgery and some more chemo. I tried to be there for my kids, but Sarah remarried and my spot was taken by her new husband. After a while I stopped calling them on birthdays and holidays, stopped giving gifts, stopped trying to be involved in their lives. It hurt almost as much as the cancer when I realized I didn't mean anything to them. I ended up marrying Jane and now we have 2 kids. It still hurts but I love my new family and they actually give a damn about me. Recently, Sarah got diagnosed with terminal heart disease and they are struggling financially. My kids called me for the first time in over a decade to ask me out for lunch. I didn't want to but Jane said they're extending an olive branch and to at least hear what they want to say. At lunch they didn't even bother with pleasantries, they jumped straight into asking me to help out their mom with medical bills. I said no and got up to leave, but my son said that even if I didn't love their mom, they did and if I loved them, I needed to help. I asked them what their half-siblings' names were, when was the last time they called, who they spent the last 2 decades worth of Father's Days with. Why the hell? Should I give a crap about a woman who took everything from me and left me alone while facing my death? Why should I give a crap about the kids who wouldn't even see me before my surgery or at any point when I was dying? They were silent. So I said, I don't care about your mom, nor do I give a single damn if she dies. And I don't care how bad her dying hurts you guys because I care about you guys about the same amount you guys care about me. Not the slightest. I won't help because I don't love her or you guys. I then paid for their food and left them at the restaurant. I have been getting calls from my ex's family telling me how awful I am for saying that to my own flesh and blood. Usually, I wouldn't care, but my wife told me that even though I'm right, I was too harsh on them. Was I in the wrong?
My boyfriend hates it when I wear my crap-stained underwear. So I kicked him out and broke up with him. It's not like they're dirty, I washed them, they just have brown lines on them. I, 21, had an irregular period for a few months after starting a new birth control. Unfortunately, my period stained about 1/3 of my undies in the crotch area. It's faint, but it's still fairly noticeable. It's a light rusty brown shade. Now that my period is more regular, the stained pairs have become my period week underwear. Most girls know what I'm talking about. If they're clean but stained, they don't need to be thrown away. The guy I'm seeing says he doesn't mind period intimacy, but when we were doing the dirty he got really grossed out when he saw my underwear. I was confused and explained it was an old period red liquid stain. He told me how unsexy it was to see what looked like a crap stain in my underwear. What the F? He asked if next time I could change into a clean pair. Not gonna lie, this pissed me off. I told him to grow up, and sarcastically apologized that my normal bodily functions is unsexy to him. Plus I pointed out he saw me pick out that pair of clean underwear from my freshly washed laundry an hour ago after my shower. We kept going in circles, so I finally kicked him out of my place and texted him I'm not interested in seeing him anymore. He told me that I'm doing him a favor because he doesn't want my blood on his PP. I blocked his number. I'm too old to deal with someone who thinks blood stains are icky. All of my girlfriends agree that he's immature since most women have a designated set of period-stained underwear for Shark Week. However, a few of my guy friends said his reaction was understandable since he didn't understand what it was, and I was too harsh. I could have educated him instead of going 0 to 100. Am I in the wrong? My husband and his friends have a nickname for me in their group chat. They won't tell me what it means. Ended up getting a text from one of my husband's female friends in his group chat, the day after I posted here. Turned out that right after I asked him about the nickname, he told all of them I'd seen it and to stop calling me that. She sent me a screenshot of his message which reads verbatim, haha, oh crap, me, just saw that. I'm so screwed, ha ha ha, but seriously don't send that anymore, I'm gonna end up in the doghouse, tears of laughter emoji. The female friend who reached out is a new addition to the group as of a couple months ago, friend of the girl one of his guy friends is dating. I'd met her a couple times on group outings and liked her. She told me she was uncomfortable when she caught on that ST was me and they were using that behind my back. Then when she was told what it stood for, after my husband's message, she thought to contact me in case I didn't know about it. I'm extremely grateful for this. Now the part everyone wanted to know. A lot of you thought it was sugar tits. I really wish. That would be cute and funny. Nope, not my luck. It stands for sausage tits. Yeah. That's what my husband and his gaggle of mental 12-year-olds refer to me. I don't even know how or why it started. I cannot fathom the thought that my husband could have described my boobs in detail to all his friends. And then they thought it sounded hilarious enough to make a nickname out of? I literally don't even know what to feel. I haven't been more humiliated in my life than I am right now. I don't know what to do about him. He apologized, but because it's just a joke to him, he doesn't seem to get or care how I feel. He apologized sincerely and promised he'd never call me that again or let any of his friends. Why did he ever in the first place? It's not a complimentary nickname that you wouldn't foresee a person not liking. Right? Isn't it obvious it's mean? Spirited, or am I crazy to assume so? Is there some way I'm just not able to see where it's not actually as bad as I feel? Anyway, that's about it. I don't know what to do. We're sleeping in separate rooms because I can't bear to be near him or have him see me. I never want him to see me naked again. I'm trying to figure out if my need for space is temporary or permanent. If it's permanent, then I'll be pursuing divorce. I just thought so highly of him. I never could have imagined he'd view me like this behind his back. It's like if he was to gain weight and I encouraged all my friends to start calling him fatty or beer belly behind his back. What other possible reason to do that than contempt? I said this, but he insists it doesn't have any deeper meaning and is just bad humor. Whatever. Time to put kiddos to bed, while he's typing away at his phone on the other side of the room. See, the issue I'm realizing is now there will always be a fear in my mind that he's saying nasty things about me to who knows who. So there's the update, sausage tits signing out. My boyfriend's friend failed no NT November to me. I don't know how to get this creep away from me, even my boyfriend is okay with it. I have been dating my boyfriend for 5 years now. We met in college. Our relationship has been really good and healthy so far until something happened last weekend. My boyfriend has a big group of friends, all male, that he brings over to our apartment every weekend. They usually watch football or Game of Thrones or just hang out. I don't know these guys super well, I wouldn't call them my friends, but obviously, I know their names and jobs and girlfriends, etc. We're like acquaintances. There's this one friend he has that I'll call Jake that I've always felt kind of uncomfortable around. He would always stare at me whenever he came into the kitchen and it always weirded me out. I brought it up with my boyfriend a few times. Jake is high-functioning autistic, and my boyfriend would always bring that up and say he's just socially awkward and he's not trying to be a creep. So I left it alone. Fast forward to this weekend, I was in the kitchen, and I heard them talk about no NT November. I wasn't trying to listen in, but we do live in a small apartment and the kitchen and living room are side by side. I heard my boyfriend saying he lost because of me, which I thought was kind of inappropriate, but whatever. Then I heard Jake saying me too, and all of them laughed. After they had all left, I told my boyfriend what I overheard and he kind of laughed it off. I pressed it though because I wasn't sure if I had misheard Jake saying he lost no NT November because of me. Then my boyfriend said that was what Jake had said. I was stunned and extremely uncomfortable, which I feel was reasonable. I told my boyfriend it was really disgusting that he would let Jake say that about me, in our own house, while I was literally next to them, and I also brought up the fact that I've talked to him before about feeling uncomfortable with Jake. My boyfriend got really defensive and said he knew Jake had a little crush on me, but it wasn't a big deal. I was really upset that despite knowing that, he let Jake come into our house. Like, what could have happened if no one else was around and we were alone? My boyfriend said I was being paranoid and Jake would never touch me or hurt me, but the fact that he touched himself to me, and I don't even know if it was to my Instagram pictures or some photo he's taken of me that I don't know about, or God forbid, something my boyfriend has sent him, still makes me extremely uncomfortable, and I told my boyfriend that. He said he would talk to Jake about it, but he kept bringing up the fact that he's autistic, so he doesn't understand social cues, and it was going to be difficult to explain why it was inappropriate to him. I'm just stunned because I don't understand how my boyfriend didn't stand up for me or say anything and continued to allow Jake into our home despite knowing he's intimately interested in me. My fiancé refused to marry me if I didn't do what he wanted. I have been engaged to my fiancé for 6 months now, and we're getting married next spring. Our relationship has not been easy. We dated for 2 years before getting engaged, and he broke up with me once in between for 5 months. There was a time I was so eager to be engaged to him, and now I'm lost. When we hit our year mark in the relationship, I started bugging him for an engagement ring. I thought he was the one, and I wanted something to show for it. He would always nod at me and say sure one day, but he never made any definite plans. That was until I begged him one night to just marry me. And that's when he told me he didn't want to. He said I didn't have the perfect body for him. He preferred hourglass bodies and said that financially successful men don't like thick women, and goes on to list all the successful men he knows and uses their girls as references. He told me that in order for me to get a ring on my fat fingers, I needed to get a liposuction. I was so desperate that I agreed to it. I got the surgery and it didn't do much, but he agreed to propose. The issue is that I can tell the surgery wasn't enough for him. He doesn't compliment me, doesn't really touch me, or initiate things with me. He doesn't complain or bash my looks, but doesn't rave about it either. But this isn't the worst of it. I am currently in grad school and he works full-time and makes over $500K/year. He is paying for the wedding and has rubbed it in my face on 2 occasions how I contribute nothing and that I basically never have the right to complain about anything ever because he works so hard to pay for things. I complained once that I feel we don't spend enough quality time. I just don't know if I'm making a huge mistake getting married to him. I don't want to be miserable. I am so anxious. I don't feel like he loves me. He pushes me away when he's having a bad day and doesn't talk to me. I just feel kind of neglected in the relationship, but I also don't want to be a victim and consider maybe he's right about some things. Breaking an engagement off is so embarrassing, and this would be his second broken engagement, and I don't want to do that to him. I just feel really lost. How do I go about this?
I'm happy that my kid is in a mental hospital. I feel like a bad person saying this, but here we go. I have 2 kids, Adam and Ben. This is about Ben. I wish I could word this differently, but since age 1, we could sense something was wrong with Ben. He was always angry at something. Some days he would be an angel, but most of the time, he was a wrecking ball. At first, we and his pediatrician thought it was terrible twos, but it just continued. If his brother or a kid got his toy or his stuff, he would beat that kid and bite him/her. He was fired from 4 kindergartens at age 5, and we were at the doors of a child psychiatrist at age 5. Our journey started with an odd diagnosis, but after the randomness of constant anger attacks, he was diagnosed with IDD at age 7. We thought we would have the answers and he would be treated, but we were very wrong in the second part. Due to his fame, we have changed the school district. We live in the EU, not in the US, but it did not change. He still had tantrums, and due to this, he has been in severe depression. It is heart-wrenching to see an 8-year-old to have depression. They don't have the childish happiness and hope. We have tried everything. We even had private tutors for him so he could be less exposed to the school environment. We even arranged special education, and he has been in really supportive schools for mental diseases, but it still continued, and at age 10, we had the first suicide attempt. He hung himself up with my belt in his brother's room. Then at age 12, he stole his mom's, my wife's still, heart medication, she has arrhythmia, and put himself in a comatose state. The next 4 years were hell. We had to send our older son to live with his grandparents in a different city, and our house was like a mental health unit. We had a caretaker who lived with us fully, and we couldn't use any kind of sharp objects in the house. I learned how unalive proof rooms were done because we had to made it built to our house. If he wasn't committing suicide, his anger was directed outside. At age 14, he wasn't allowed to enter any public building in the town because he tried to beat someone or smash down a window. He spent more days at a ward than outside. But 3 months ago, he reached a new level. Until that day, he never tried to murder someone, but on that day, he almost killed. He had to stay in the ICU for a month, a 8-year-old kid for beeping with his bike while he was riding in front of our house. He managed to open the door and he choked the kid until my wife became aware and hit his head with a pan. After that day, a judge ordered him to be permanently institutionalized at a mental health center. I wish I could say I was sad, but I feel happy. For the first time in 3 months, I feel nothing but joy and happiness. Me, my wife and Adam had a great week together since ages, and we had our long-deserved vacation. I might look cruel, but I can't think of anything but relief. I should feel guilty for saying he is the government's problem anymore, but I don't, and it makes me feel guilty. I don't know if I love my son anymore, but I feel glad. I am grateful to know he won't be around us anymore. I wish I could feel a little more remorseful, but I can't. Maybe this is the thing that makes me remorseful.
What is the creepiest thing a man has said to you in public? A man in the club came up to me and said, "I just thought I should let you know that you have great birthing hips. You don't look 13, I want your number." I was 11 in a street market in Italy. A vendor came up and started trying to convince me to marry his son. My dad ran up and was like, "Dude, she's 11. The guy said my son is only 26. It's perfect." I was once stalked by a man who worked in the store that was next to mine, and he had told me that he made his Skyrim character to look like me. I was in Paris at a Christmas market and a guy came up to me and told me I was very beautiful. Before I could say anything back, he said, "You know, I've been following you for a while and saw your friends walk away from you. I could kidnap you so quickly, they would never see you again." Then he laughs, and my friend, who was only like 8 feet away and heard this exchange, pulls my arm and we start fast walking away. We cut down so many alleys, popped in and out of shops, and got on different trains since it was nearly impossible to know if he was still following us. This was a guy who had found my Facebook in about half a second. I have no idea how. People I want to give it to can't find it without my help. So how does intimacy work for you? Does it hurt you? How do you do it? He'd found out I was disabled and decided this was an excellent and appropriate conversation piece. I was wearing my horseback riding clothes. He held the door for me and said, "You can ride me." When I kept walking into the store ignoring him, he screamed after me, "Hey, B-word." I said, "You could ride me." This is why we can't have nice things, people. I was in Walmart and some creepy guy came up to me and my sister and pointed at his junk in sweatpants, clearly not wearing underwear, and asked if we wanted to touch it. Now I refuse to go to Walmart.
What popular life advice do you disagree with? Don't eat cheese before you go to bed, you'll have nightmares. Nobody can tell me when I can and can't eat my effing cheese. I'm an adult, goddammit. Respect your elders. Just because you're old doesn't mean you're wise, or even reasonable for that matter. Do what you love as a job and you'll never work a day in your life. My experience has been do what you love as a job and it will suck all the love out of it. Just be yourself. Some people are naturally jerks, B-words, egomaniacs, narcissists, apathetic, and or liars. Those people need to not be themselves but instead get help on how to be a decent person. When talking about love, people say, just be yourself. It'll happen when you least expect it. The part that I agree with, you shouldn't try to make yourself radically different. You should do things that are consistent with who you are. But that can mean finding other aspects of yourself and figuring out how to display those aspects. It can mean becoming a better version of yourself. I think advice like be yourself and it'll happen is too passive. It's true that you can't force romance to happen, and that there's a strong element of chance. But there are still steps you can take that will tend to increase the chances. Go to more parties. Go to a variety of parties, some that involve drinking, and some that don't. Some where you're slightly older, and some where you're slightly younger. Go out of your comfort zone a little bit more. Try a sport that you've never tried before, or go to a concert in a genre of music you don't know anything about. Strike up conversations with people, not necessarily trying to get dates in a really calculating way, but just try to develop the habit of having friendly, amicable chats with people you don't know super well. Don't just passively sit around being yourself and wait for things to happen. That doesn't work. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Out of sight, out of mind. One of these people is wrong. I think my religious girlfriend is intimately manipulating me into marriage. My girlfriend, 25, and I, 22, haven't had intimacy yet. Not with each other. Not with anyone. For religious reasons she wants to remain a first-timer until her honeymoon night. My initial reaction was like, sucks, but fair enough, her choice, let me see where this goes. For the record, my reason for being a first-timer has nothing to do with any religion. I've just been too socially inept to make sufficient attempts to actually have intimacy. However, the one time I did man up and approach a girl, it happened to be the girl who had absolutely no plans to give it up until she met Mr. Right, which may or may not be me. That said, our relationship is now 1 year old and we're so in love it's borderline disgusting. We've low-key been discussing marriage, which she seems keen on, but I've made it clear I'm not on that level yet. Recently though, my girlfriend and I have been living under the same roof. A first for us. She's staying with me while my roommate is out of town. We haven't seen much of each other because of the pandemic, so needless to say we were excited to spend time together. We would kiss and cuddle, even sleep in the same bed, but she never allowed anything beyond that. Whenever my hands gravitated towards her boobs or butt, she would become flustered and pull away. In those moments, my hearty would visibly throb inside my pants and I could tell by the sneaky glances she liked it. As the days went by, she seemed to be doing everything in her power to trigger more hearties. Changing clothes in front of me. Begging me to piggyback her to and from the shower while she's wearing nothing but a towel. Making noise whenever we made out. All stuff she's never done with me before. Worst of all was when she prayed at night. Hearing her pray was nothing new, but hearing her go into detail about her lustful thoughts was not only new, it was hot. Pardon the pun, but it became really hard for me not to get turned on. Last night was no different. She was on her knees praying while I was laying in bed with another Hardy. As soon as she prayed about wanting to taste my liquid children, I got out of bed and took my raging Hardy to the bathroom, where I furiously touched myself. When I returned to the bedroom, my girlfriend laughed and asked what happened to my hard-on. I wasn't laughing though. Call it post-finish clarity or whatever, but I told her that I feel like she's going out of her way to turn me on and it's unfair because it makes me want to have intimacy and we can't. She shrugged and told me the only thing stopping us from effing all day every day was a ring on her finger. If that wasn't savage enough, she got completely naked and climbed into bed, because she randomly felt like sleeping in the nude. I told her I wasn't gonna play this game anymore and spent the night on the couch. We have one more week left in the apartment before my roommate comes back. Would it be a bad move to ask my girlfriend to leave sooner because I think she's being too hot? Just because I'm the one having a hard time managing my intimate urges, does it give me the right to be upset at my girlfriend for it? I overheard my wife tell her friend on the phone that she settled for being with me, and that marrying me was her last resort. I overheard my wife talking to one of her best friends on the phone while I was passing the bedroom. This friend is in a serious relationship. My wife then said to her, "Sweetie, remember it's your choice. Don't settle for just anyone." That's the mistake I made. Who knows who else I could have had. My name was my very last resort, and now look where it made me end up. Hearing that honestly broke my heart in two. Does she even love me? Why am I being treated as a second base? Am I being dramatic and overreacting? I haven't said anything about it since. I honestly don't know what to do, but hearing her say has really made me upset. Just did one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Today after breakfast I told her we should sit down and talk. She was hesitant, but I said it was important. We went to the living room and she said to me, "I already know what this is about." My post apparently made it to the front page, so of course she saw it after scrolling down a bit under popular. Of course the waterworks started happening right away. I told her what she said had deeply hurt me, but obviously she already knew that since she read my post. Through her tears, she said I was just joking, I wasn't serious. She then went on saying stuff like "I love you, I love you." I told her I can't be in a marriage where my so doesn't love me the same way I love them. She tried to tell me that she loved me and that I meant something to her. But it was all boo. She said she didn't want to lose me. I told her I don't think this marriage was the right decision. And from there I basically told her it was over. I told her I knew how she really felt about me, and that it was messed up. She basically played with my emotions. For all those wondering, we have no kids, and I pay fully for the apartment we live in, and I own almost everything we have. Other than her clothes. I even pay for her car. So after all of this she'll have little to nothing left. Before our marriage, we agreed to sign a prenup, and at that moment, I've never been so happy with the decision I've made in my life. After that, it was a few seconds of awkward silence, before she said to me, "F you." She started screaming at me, telling me you just can't end things like that. I told her I could do whatever I wanted, and that's when she became very hostile. She screamed at me saying, "You're the worst relationship I've ever been in. You think I can't find someone again? Do you think you'll ever from someone as good as me? You're an idiot, my name." She grabbed her bag and phone, and said I'm leaving. Before slamming the door behind her. At that moment I felt like I was on one of those dramatic sitcoms you'd find of TV. I sat down on the couch and cried, and I'm still crying as I type this up. It's both happy and sad tears, and I knew it was only time before she cheated on me or left me. She never loved me, it was obvious. Our relationship only went one way, and I feel like a complete idiot for not seeing it earlier. I live in California, and I'm gonna start the process to annul our marriage. Tomorrow, I'm gonna start throwing all of her belongings into trash bags, cause that's essentially where they belong. I'm not throwing out her stuff. Just using the trash bags as a way to give her back the things she owns. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your kind words and your great advice. All of you gave me the courage to stand up for myself, and I know my life will certainly improve as a result.
I'm finding out my girlfriend of 1 year is deaf as I'm on the bus on my way to see her for the first time. I met her in a match of League of Legends 2 years ago. We talked a lot, became really close and basically started dating 1 year ago. We send each other pictures all the time and videos as well, so I never understood her apprehension to FaceTime me. We tell each other everything, I mean everything. She's presented me her parents and I know all her family. Today I was gonna surprise her by visiting for the first time. I talked with her sister to make sure it was okay. Less than 30 minutes ago I get a text from her, and am copy-pasting a translated version. "Hey love, you are so sweet and beautiful and you deserve so much better. I know you are coming because S told me. I'm sorry to ruin your surprise, it's just I'd hate to see your face when you find out. I know we promised to always be truthful, but I've been lying to you all this time." That was her first paragraph and I was crapping myself cause I thought she was breaking up with me, but then she continued, "You are too caring to ask why I never speak, why I never sent you a voice note. You are just too perfect and there's no way you'd be with me if you knew. The reason is very simple, I was born deaf. I'm sorry you have to find out this way. I'm just a coward for not telling you sooner. I'll understand if you don't want to be with me anymore. Holy hell, I was expecting something totally different and now I'm scared cause I've never interacted with a deaf person and I want to make sure she gets that I love her either way. I'm still in disbelief that she thought it a deal breaker for me. La concha de la Laura, I'm scared and needed to let it all out.
I asked my creepy roommate to keep her intimate activities outside of my room. I was literally in the room. A little backstory is required to better understand my roommate. For the entire first semester of this year, freshman, my roommate has had a body odor problem, has been making free use of my trash bags, silverware, soap, lint roller, etc. things that I had to replace multiple times. I had talked to him plenty of times and even gotten my RA involved to meditate to no avail. So tensions were already existing. Now onto the story. Earlier today my roommate left our shared dorm room, one room 2 beds, to go to a party. In the several hours he was gone I had invited my girlfriend over to eat and watch TV. After a while of us being there my roommate arrives with a girl. They settle onto his bed with the blankets over them and minutes later they're making noises and he's doing the deed with us in the room. At this time my girlfriend was falling asleep and didn't know what was going on, so I got her up fast and got out. After sending her on her way I went down the hall to my friend's room to tell them what was going on, then sent the roommate a very strongly worded text saying that was something he shouldn't have done. Around 45 minutes pass and I go back to the room to check if they're still there. They are, and it's 10:45 p.m. at this point, so I leave again. Wait another 30 minutes, and get a text saying come back and dude. I return to her sitting on the bed and he says, we can just talk one-on-one, you don't have to be like that. Then I lose it. Now I'm normally soft-spoken and don't anger easily, but I'm a fairly big dude and he's never heard me angry before. I go off, with choice words, about how disrespectful and disgusting he is for what he did and bringing up things he's done all semester. I finished by saying, and this is what I think tipped the scales, this is something someone would get their butt beaten for. Then right after telling him you need to leave now. Take the girl and get out. He left while calling someone and I though that was the end of it. I would talk to my RA tomorrow and be done, but 20 minutes later the door slams shut and him and a grown man who is wearing a puffer jacket with no shirt walk in. The guys start yelling at me saying respect goes both ways, and I need to show his boy some respect. He calls my girlfriend who was on FaceTime with me then a B word and keeps threatening me and saying he'd hit my butt. He finishes by leaving the room and saying if you report this I'll pull up with my homies to take care of you, so I waited for them to leave, got my friends to help me move my stuff out after filling an incident report with campus security and got put into temporary housing for my safety. Do narcissists quickly forget their exes? It depends on your type of narcissist. Most narcissists have a pattern and they usually stick to it. If someone with narcissism is interested in you, these are likely their patterns for your romantic partners. Big game hunters, once they bag you, and have figuratively mounted your head on their trophy wall, they lose all interest in you. They are too busy hunting their next trophy to even remember your name. If you thought you were in a serious relationship, you were mistaken. The romantics, they will treasure the good memories and even talk with other people about how perfect the good times were with you. It all looks better in the rear view mirror than it actually was when you were together. All this unfortunately does not do the ex any good, because even if they came back, they would leave you again, and again. They are in love with the idea of love and not you. The recyclers, they have a group of willing lovers who they tend to cycle through repetitively. When they get bored or angry with you, they move on to the next person in the group. This can go on forever. I have known situations like this that lasted so long that all the exes got to know each other and sometimes even socialized and commiserated with each other. Whether your ex will think about you later depends on his or her pattern. However, as narcissists cannot do without narcissistic supplies, they are likely to think of you most when they need a boost to their ego or are lonely and in desire for intimacy. And, if you are honest with yourself, that is when you are likely to be thinking about them as well. Just save yourself the stress and try to forget them. They'll forget you eventually anyways, you're just their plaything. Good luck guys.
My fiancé had a tantrum because I skipped his family dinner to see my dying sister. I got engaged to my partner of 7 years, Ray, in May. Both sides of our family were really happy about this and we had a big family meal 2 weeks after getting engaged. His brother lives 250 miles away and couldn't get here for that meal, so we decided to have a meal just for his family in late June when his brother would be back for the weekend. This weekend was arranged long before we got engaged, so he wasn't back just for the meal. Earlier this year my sister Casey got a serious eye infection that very quickly turned into an ulcer, which scarred her cornea and left it at a high risk of a perforation. She needed a corneal graft, but her surgeon was away for 4 weeks, so she was going to have to wait until he got back to have it. However, her eye didn't hold and it perforated the day I was supposed to be going to the family meal with Ray's brother. Kaisa's wife was at work and had her phone turned off, and our mom was away with our stepdad, so when Casey called me to let me know what was happening I knew she would be at the hospital on her own. I immediately talked to my boss and he let me go early so Casey wasn't on her own. I text Ray to let him know what was going on and he texted me back to send Kay his love and to remind me about the meal that night. I ignored the comment about the meal as it was the last thing on my mind. Once I got to the hospital, I was taken back into a room where Casey was, to be greeted by 3 doctors and 2 nurses rushing around trying to help Casey. I was then informed that she needed to have an emergency operation to have her eye glued or else she would lose it. The problem was that they didn't have a surgeon at that hospital that could do it and she needed to go to another hospital an hour and a half away. They asked if she would need transportation or if I could take her. I said I would take her. Once we got to the other hospital we were told that she would be having the operation at 5:30 p.m. I knew then that I wouldn't make the dinner and text Ray to let him know. He flipped out and basically told me to leave Casey at the hospital and have her wife pick her up after the op was done. At this point I still hadn't been able to get a hold of Kaisa's wife. I told him that wasn't going to happen and that he was out of order to even ask me to do that. I then texted his mom and told her what was going on. She was really supportive and told me to stay with Casey and let her know how the operation goes. A dinner can be rescheduled, Casey's health can't. I also spoke with his brother, who was equally as understanding. I stayed with Casey. Her operation was a success and I got her back home about 9 p.m. Her wife had ordered some Chinese and offered me some, which I happily accepted as I hadn't eaten since lunch. With that, I didn't get home till about 11 p.m. and I was already asleep. Ray was very short with me for days after, and we ended up having a huge fight where he told me that I should have put his brother and family before Casey. He said he was embarrassed going to the meal without me. I responded that I was embarrassed though I would put a meal before my sister's health. This led to another week of awkwardness between us before we finally sat down and we sorted it out, or so I thought. 8 weeks ago Casey got her graft and so far everything is going really well with it. On Saturday his brother was here, so we went out for dinner with his family. His family were all asking about how Casey was doing and I showed them a picture of the stitches in her eye. I thought that everything had gone really well until we got home and he got really angry, saying that I shouldn't have brought up Casey's health issues and I shouldn't have shown them the picture. I argued that they'd asked about her and asked to see the picture. It ended with him telling me that I needed to put him and his family before Casey or else we weren't going to work. His family will come before mine once we are married, so I should get used to it. I went upstairs and packed a bag. I'm now at my mom's house and he's been bombarding me with text and calls since I left. I do love him, but I will never put his family above my own family's health. I feel like he's expecting me to spend every holiday with his family and put their wants above my family's needs, which won't happen. I'm very close to my sister and my mom, that's not going to change. So I don't really know how to move forward or if I even want to. Has anyone experienced anything like this before? If so, how did you deal with it? I called my boyfriend the office SLT when his coworkers told me he slept with half the office staff. My boyfriend Ben and I have been dating for almost 2 years. While our relationship is not perfect, it's pretty damn close. Our biggest disagreement was when I switched oat milk brands and he kept forgetting and bringing the other brand. We're both quite naturally calm people and prefer a constructive discussion to a heated argument. This is why what happened last week caught me off guard. Towards the beginning of our relationship, when we weren't exclusive, Ben had a fling with a coworker, let's call her Steph. He is the head of IT at a major firm and she works in a different department, so they only see each other occasionally, even more so now that he switched to remote work 2 days a week. When he told me about their fling and I talked to my friends about it, they said I wasn't allowed to be bothered about it as our relationship wasn't defined at the time and they only slept together once. Some days I'll fixate on it and wonder if he talked to Steph at work and if she still fancied him. I know I'm not allowed to monitor his interactions with anyone and would never try to control him, but it does make me feel something when I think about him even being near her. I don't know if it's jealousy or insecurity or even if it's rational. Anyway, last week we got invited to a dinner party hosted by his boss. I'd been to a couple of his office parties before but only interacted with a couple people and usually was glued to Ben's side all night since I am a bit of an introvert. From my immediate impression, Ben's boss is a bit of a rich jerk, but he knew how to throw a good enough party that I began to loosen up and interact with more than 2 people all night. As a teacher, I've always felt insecure around people who make so much more money than me and always felt like they looked down on me, but that couldn't have been further from the truth. I was immediately included on the inside jokes, made a couple of my own, and even got invited to a double date with one of his co-workers and his wife. While Ben was grabbing me some food, one of his friends made a passing comment about Steph. She was at the party but stayed away from the group we were hanging out with. I said I don't care about her, but I also have nothing to talk to her about, which is true. I wasn't about to go compare notes with her, and the fact that she did stay away from us did put me at ease and made me not as wary of her. His friend laughed and said, well, then you might feel the same way about Molly. Molly was another co-worker of Ben's who I had actually gotten on with the whole night. I was confused and didn't understand what he was trying to say. When he saw my reaction, he completely clammed up, but I demanded he explain himself. Another one of his friends from the group said that Molly and Ben slept together. To say I was shocked is an understatement. I then asked how many other girls Ben had slept with from the office, and they told me they knew of 4 different girls. At that point Ben came back, unaware his friends had spilled his secrets but picked up on the tense atmosphere. Internally I was fuming and hurt, but I kept a cool facade, and when Ben asked what was wrong I just looked at him and said, your friends were just informing me that you're the office SLT. He looked shocked and I left to go to the bathroom to calm down. I knew if I stayed at this party any longer I would have a breakdown and needed to leave. So I went straight to our car and drove home without telling him. When I got back home I replied to his numerous texts about where I was and told him I came home and he could find his own way back. He got home around an hour after me, and by that time I had already cried my feelings out and was ready to have a conversation. He came into the house absolutely livid, which I didn't understand because he was the one who lied to me. He's never even raised his voice at me for anything before, but he was shouting about how I embarrassed him and word had gotten around to his other co-workers because I reacted immaturely. I tried to explain my position, that how would he feel if he found out I had slept with 4 of my co-workers and never told him. He just kept reiterating that he never had a relationship with them and it was just intimacy. I knew going into our relationship he was way more experienced than me intimately, but I refused to believe he could sleep with these women and not feel anything for them, but that is beside the point and he should have told me. But all he is hung up on is that I insulted him to his friends. When he was done yelling, he said he was going to stay at his brother's house to calm down and not to contact him until he cooled down. I told him I wouldn't contact him first because I'm not in the wrong, he is. It's been a week since he's been at his brother's house and we still haven't talked. I have no clue where we go from here. Was I wrong to react the way I did? I didn't think I was, but now I'm second-guessing myself. I didn't think calling him the office slut would elicit this reaction, but I don't think it was a lie either. Should I apologize or wait for him to make the first move? My issue is not so much with him sleeping with the other women but hiding it.
Who do you fear the most? Groups of young teenagers in the United Kingdom. I know some Americans will probably read this and think I'm a right wimp for being scared of a load of kids, but you don't know, man. You weren't there. See, the thing is with these kids, be they scallies, chavs, neds, roadmen, townies or whatever you call them in your region, is that typically they appear in large groups, they have little to lose and so don't care about doing the stupidest crap possible, and they are not afraid to hound you and make your life a misery if you challenge them. Sure, one-on-one, I wouldn't be particularly scared about a 14-year-old skull, although they increasingly carry pointy objects and medieval weapons and crap, but the point is that you rarely do encounter them one-on-one. And let's say, there's a load of them camped outside your nan's house chucking stones at her windows and you think, F that, I'll go chase them off. What is likely to happen is that they'll start posturing around you and throwing stones at your head, or they might F off. But then they'll find out where you live, if you live nearby, and they'll start wrecking your house and you might even find your house firebombed. It might sound extreme, but it does happen. The police are ineffective as they have no respect for the police and, anyway, they're minors so cannot properly be held accountable unless they do something really bad. And anyway, being tough on crime only goes so far. A more holistic long-term approach to the issue is required, but sadly no government has the vision or appetite to really commit to such policies. So, essentially, you are powerless to do anything meaningful against them because you will only exacerbate the situation. These kids have the capability to make your life hell. They can make going to the local shops a genuinely nerve-wracking experience, particularly for the elderly and those with disabilities. They can really ruin the atmosphere of otherwise solid, working-class communities. And that's the thing too, it is the working-class communities where they live and hang out that suffer the real brunt of their aimless destructive behavior. You can be somewhat insulated against them if you live away from them or even just on a road they don't frequent, but if you are forced by circumstance to live where they congregate, then your life can be pretty miserable if you get on their bad side. And yeah, I'm scared of them. I'm less scared of some actual high-up gang leader than I am these kids because at least with the real gang members they're not interested in you unless you give them a reason to be, whereas, like I said, these kids have nothing to lose and might target you simply because they can and they think it's funny. It's the one thing I really don't miss about living in more working-class areas, which can otherwise be much more friendly and interesting places to live. I exposed my abusive ex to her new fiancé and now everyone is calling me a creep. I, 26, dated my ex-girlfriend in high school when we were both 16. I had a crush on her since second grade, so when she finally agreed to go out with me in high school, I was over the moon. Unfortunately, our relationship was a nightmare. I quickly realized she has a low self-esteem, constantly asked for reassurance about her looks and weight, and if I didn't tell her what she wanted to hear, she would gaslight and manipulate me to make me feel guilty. I didn't realize it at the time, but after reading stuff online and listening to some Andrew Tate podcasts, I realized her behavior was emotionally abusive. We dated for around 1 year and she ended up breaking up with because of her mental health. I never saw her after high school because we moved to different cities and her social media accounts were set to private. Recently, there was a high school reunion. I found out she would be there, so I decided to go. She hadn't changed much, she was still overweight. She said hi to me as if nothing had happened and proceeded to make small talk with me. It really bothered me that she was pretending nothing happened between us, so I asked if we can talk privately. I told her about how I felt about the way she treated me when we were dating. She said something like she was going through a tough time with her self-confidence and apologized for taking it out on me, etc. She said ever since she met her current partner she was feeling more confident about herself. She then told me they were engaged, which also came as a shock to me. I asked her if she had told him about us and how she treated me when we were dating. She said she mentioned her past relationships to him but didn't share all of the details. I told her she needs to tell him about how she was abusive to me so that he knows who he is marrying. At this point, she made up some excuse and ran away from the conversation. I thought that her new partner deserved to know what he's getting into. She's still overweight and has not made any effort to change or improve herself and probably has the same insecurities. I knew this man was going to have a terrible marriage. So after the party, I used a friend's account to find her fiancé and I sent him a message detailing the things she did when we were dating in high school. He responded asking me to stop bothering them. It's been about a week since I did this and now I'm getting bombarded with messages from high school friends calling me a creep and a jerk. I don't understand how people can side with her when she was the one being abusive. It is her responsibility to let her fiancé know about it. I did what I thought was the right thing to do. Maybe they're reacting like this because they don't have the full story about our relationship? Am I the jerk for helping this poor man?
I told my narcissistic sister to off herself when she tried to guilt-trip me. And I don't regret it at all. I'm 24 and my sister, Christy, is 25. I hated her for a time, but now I just don't care. We were raised in the same house by the same parents but treated completely differently. Christy went to private school, was chauffeured around by our stay-at-home mother, and was given a hefty allowance. I went to public school, rode the public bus, walked everywhere, and never had an allowance. No extended family would say anything about it beyond claiming my parents and sister loved me, that I have to understand that it wasn't their place and that maybe things would be better if I tried harder. I hated them just as much as I hated my parents. Christy mocked me relentlessly growing up. She was the pretty one and the smart one. If I got upset by her mocking, I was told I was being sensitive and that it was sibling love. If I said hurtful things right back, I was grounded because I took it too far. I wasn't allowed to outshine her, I wasn't allowed to have friends. She policed my clothing, and the few nice clothes our aunts and uncles would get me would be replaced with the ugliest clothes I'd ever seen. It would end up in her wardrobe. My parents would back up Christy, saying I couldn't pull it off and that it looks inappropriate when I wore it. The rest of the family, the people who gave me the clothes included, would compliment how good she looked and pretty much validate Christy. I know for a fact that I am and have always been attractive. Even in those ugly outfits, I managed to get asked out on multiple dates and got a boyfriend sophomore year. Said boyfriend knocked up Christy our senior year after cheating on me with her since I got my early admission letter and was neglecting him and the family. She told me the day before my graduation, claiming he was going to marry her and they were in love and it grew from me abandoning them both, blah blah. Our mother was there and because I didn't really react, she thought I was being a good sister and said she was so proud of me. I didn't cry about it. I just packed up my car when everyone was asleep, skipped my graduation and the supposed party that was planned, and I left. My only stop was to the police station where I gave them my info, told them that if I'm reported missing that I'm not, and bluntly said I'm running from an abusive family, was going away to college, and never coming back. Got rid of my phone and everything. Went to school, got a good internship turned job, bought the condo I was renting, and had my dream wedding. Christy got in contact with me via Facebook. Her DMs, 2 days worth because I don't really use my Facebook, consisted of her saying I abandoned her when she needed me most, that she's practically a single mom, her husband, my ex, hates her and got with a woman that looks like me, our parents blame her for me leaving and won't help her, and the entire family treats her kid like crap for being the product of an affair. She didn't get into any of the colleges she applied to, and couldn't go to college as a full-time mother. She switched between blaming me for her misfortune and throwing a pity party. While reading, I didn't feel much of anything reading how awful her life turned out. I think I truly just stopped caring, so even karma beating her down didn't give me any joy. Then she both and tagged me in a post that read I feel like I'm drowning and I just need my sister. Why won't you respond? Why did you leave me when I needed you the most? Please, I'm in such a bad place. If you don't help, I'll just end it all. I replied via comment and DM, go ahead and off yourself. I'm not helping you and frankly don't care. You stopped being my sister the day you gave me bleach as a gift, and blocked her shortly after. The logical part of me is telling me that was wrong, but I just can't bring myself to care enough to feel guilty. If something happens to her, I still don't think I'll care. This is contrary to what her family and friends think, all people I've blocked without bothering to read their messages.
What can make a good person turn to the dark side? Fear. It's something everyone experiences in their life, but too much of it can turn someone into something you'd never recognize. We all have been scared of something in life, scared of the dark, scared of the monster under your bed, scared of disappointment. But we have experienced the benefits of someone helping ease our fears in a beneficial way, some don't. Have you ever wondered why Hitler turned out the way he did? Or why did the Nazis follow what he said without any protests? Let's take a look at their environment. Germany had just lost the First World War, and their economy had been suffering. They were afraid for their life. They were afraid they wouldn't have their next meal. And Hitler, jumping on the hate of Jewish people, had latched their fears onto the backs of Jewish people. And thus began the atrocities. Masses of German people joined the NZ Party and began to commit atrocities on the Jewish people, all stemming from their prejudice and fear of losing their lifelines. Now you'd think, I get scared too, but I would never hurt someone else in the way that they did. That's easy to say when you're sitting there on your cell phone, rotting in your bedroom. But a famous psychologist had a similar question: would anyone turn to this level of violence? And so he created the famous study called the Milgram experiment. This study was to test whether someone will follow orders to do terrible things. We all would think that normal people wouldn't hurt anyone, but we thought wrong. In the experiment, Milgram took ordinary people who were interested in learning how memory worked and basically lied to them about what the study would be. The participants believed the experiment would be a regular memory test on people to see how well people could remember things when taught by another. But what they didn't know was that they were about to be driven to a place of no return. Milgram brought the participant to a room with a computer and told them that in the other room, another participant would be labeled the learner. The participant was then told that they would ask the participant several questions, and if they got a question wrong, they would be shocked. To show the participants what the shock would be like, they would be shocked at the lowest level. As the learner got more and more questions wrong, they'd be shocked at a higher level. Here's where the deception started. The learner was not a real participant but rather a part of Milgram's experiment and would not be shocked. Instead, it would be an audio of someone pretending to be shocked. The participant wouldn't be shocking the learner, but they didn't know that. When the participants began the experiment, the learners would continuously get questions wrong, and the participants would have to shock them. They did not shock them eagerly. In fact, they would anxiously do it whenever the experimenter encouraged them to do it. They would even say that if they continued shocking, it would be on Milgram's back and not theirs. The learner would let out screams of pain, and eventually, they would fall silent. Only some of the participants went to the most extreme level of shock. The participants were not unaffected by this, though. One of them even had a heart attack from the stress. However, at the end of the day, they continued to shock the learner when the experimenter pressed them to continue. They were too scared to do otherwise. They just followed the instructions blindly. This tells us a lot about our society. Normal people in everyday life can be pushed to do anything as long as some form of authority pushes them. In other words, obedience can push anyone to do anything through a little bit of fear.
What is something you're afraid to admit? I miss the beer named 2020 virus. I know it's crazy to say that because so many people died, but there was something special about that time. I can remember the day everything shut down, March 13, 2020. I was in my sophomore year of high school and I was desperate to go home. I didn't know anything about the virus that day, but the nervous chatter of my classmates quickly introduced the virus to me. I didn't think it was that big of a deal until rumors of having an early dismissal that day. That's when they told us. Our teachers passed out papers that explained the risk of the virus and said we'd be having a week break. They fully expected us back the week after and wanted us to do our work as usual. When we left that day, I was the happiest I'd ever been. I just started dating a new boy, and we left with the promise that we'd see each other in a week. I was wrong. But I'm happy about it. During the lockdown, while everyone was complaining about having a hard time concentrating at home or lacking social connections, I found myself thriving in a way I never did before. The thing is that I've always had horrible social anxiety when I was in school. I always felt like people were judging me and I stayed away from all people. I was that weird girl in the corner who looked like she didn't know how to dress up or brush her hair. When I was home, I was about to be myself again. I didn't feel like everyone was watching me. Most people actually had their cameras off themselves. Before, I wouldn't eat at lunch because I felt like people would think I was fat, but when I was home, I finally ate 3 meals a day. You'd be surprised how much better you'd feel when you eat regularly. I also made more friends than I ever did before. Now, I didn't have to rely on social cues and find when was the right time to add myself to the conversation. Now, it was time for group chats. The group chat I had during 2020 gave me lifelong friends. They were people I would have never spoken to in high school, and suddenly, I knew everything about them. I would call them every night and although I was physically alone, I felt alive. There's something special about sitting in your comfiest PJs and clicking into a Zoom call. I wouldn't be lying if I said that I didn't miss the feeling of being stuck in your house with nothing to do but connect to the people you love online. I ruined my sister-in-law's child bride wedding and now everyone hates me. My husband have been married for a while. His sister, 16, let's call her Tina, liked a guy at her school and she always told me about him, but she was too shy to share it with anyone else. For context, my husband's family is extremely religious so they don't allow their children to do any premarital intimacy. My husband and I moved somewhere else in the past year and I stopped seeing his sister. I heard that she was engaged. I was shocked, so was my husband. She is too young to be married. After I heard Tina was engaged, I spoke to her and that's when I found out she had slept with the guy that she liked from school, and her father was forcing her to get married to him. She told me that it was just an innocent thing and she didn't want to marry him. The thing that broke my heart, she never said no. She agreed to marry a guy that she just had a crush on from school, never thought now she would be forced to build a family with him. She tried to explain to her family that it was just a crush and she was curious about intimacy. Weeks before the wedding I had to tell my husband about everything. I told him that he has to go there and take Tina and bring her here, our house. He did exactly what I told him to do. A day before the wedding he went to his family's house and took Tina and brought her to our house and she has been living with us ever since. His family has hated me ever since. They tried to convince Tina once again that she should have married that man and that I'm a snake for breaking off the wedding. Last night she argued with me and my husband and told us that we ruined her life and she wished she got married that day and listening to me has ruined her chance of being happy. My boyfriend asked me if I would choose him over my sister. I said no. Now he's having a temper tantrum and doesn't think we are ready for marriage anymore. I think he's overreacting. My boyfriend and I were watching the show, The Ultimatum, and we started asking each other ultimatum questions. He asked me if it was between your sister and me, who would you choose never to see again? Without hesitation, I said I would choose to never see him again. I wasn't expecting his reaction and he looked really hurt, but I tried to explain. I said if I had no choice and I had to pick my sister or him to never see again, the reason I would pick him to never see again is because he would have support while my sister wouldn't. Not trying to make this a sob story, but my sister and I haven't had an easy life. She and her children are the only biological family I have left who is alive and vice versa. We really depend on each other, and this is vastly different from my boyfriend who comes from a massive extended family to the point that he doesn't know how many first cousins he has. Even with my explanation, he seemed really hurt and yesterday told me he doesn't think we should even be considering marriage if I don't choose him first every time like he would me. I don't see what I did was wrong and my answer is still the same. I would choose my sister over him if I had to make a choice. He's now ignoring me and huffing around the house looking like an idiot. He even told some of our mutual friends and now they're barking up my phone telling me that my significant other should always be my priority. I just think that my sister needs to help me. He could always find another me, but she can't find another sister.